There was a specific technique for physical sight, not just some spiritual idea, but actual seeing that was taught centuries ago. And the story goes that this technique was deliberately scrubbed from scripture because it gave people the power to see these external forces. So let's talk about something really fascinating, a provocative idea, a suppressed teaching that claims you can actually see the hidden influences that affect your life every single day. We're going to explore where this teaching comes from and the simple but kind of profound technique it offers for seeing the unseen.
Okay, let's just jump right in. You know that sudden impulse to do something destructive, or that wave of fear that makes no rational sense? That little voice in your head that just loves to sabotage you? We all get them. But this ancient teaching asks a pretty radical question. What if those thoughts aren't entirely yours?
And here's the core claim. It says that there was a specific technique for physical sight, not just some spiritual idea, but actual seeing that was taught centuries ago. And the story goes that this technique was deliberately scrubbed from scripture because it gave people the power to see these external forces. And once you see them, well, they lose their power over you.
So what is this invisible attack? Let's break down exactly how this hidden influence is supposed to work.
The whole game here is deception. This teaching suggests these external influences work by making their suggestions feel like they're coming from inside your own mind. They kind of attach to your energy, they manipulate your emotions, and they trick you into thinking, oh, that's just me, that's just my own fear, my own doubt. Now, these ancient texts don't just talk about some vague, shadowy force. Oh no, they give it a name. So let's meet the Archons.
The word Archon literally comes from the Greek word for rulers. And in Gnostic traditions, Archons aren't just random spirits. They're described as agents of a kind of false creator, and their whole job is to keep humanity stuck in an illusion by messing with our perception and feeding on our emotional energy.
And that right there gets to their number one weapon. It's not some overwhelming force. According to this teaching, their entire system of control is built on one simple, powerful fact. Most people can't see them. Invisibility is the foundation of everything they do. Now, it's really important to understand the distinction being made here. The Gnostic view separates archons from what we might think of as demons. Demons are often shown as chaotic, individual tormentors, right? Archons, on the other hand, are framed as an organized system, rulers, and their goal is way more subtle. It's not about possession. It's about maintaining an illusion to harvest energy.
So how do they stay invisible? Well, the explanation given is that they exist in frequencies just outside of what our eyes can normally pick up. I mean, think about it. What we call visible light is a laughably tiny fraction, less than 1/100th of 1% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. This teaching claims the Archons are just hanging out in the frequencies right next door.
Okay, so if they're right there, how do we see them? That brings us to the heart of this whole thing, a technique that was supposedly lost to time. And this is where the story gets really wild. The claim is that this technique was actually taught by Jesus himself. Proponents point to texts like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene as proof that he wasn't just teaching a metaphor about spiritual sight, but a tangible, physical method for expanding what the human eye can literally perceive. And the people who learned this technique, they were called the eklektoi. It's a Greek term that means the elect, but it didn't mean they were part of some exclusive club. It just meant they were the ones who were taught how to see beyond the veil of what we consider normal perception. So here's the alleged history in a nutshell. First, the technique is taught. Then it's written about in Gnostic texts. But then early church councils, like the famous Council of Nicaea, supposedly deemed it all heresy and had it systematically removed and suppressed. It was only with the modern discovery of texts found at places like Nag Hammadi that this knowledge started to resurface. All right, let's get down to the practical part. Enough history. How exactly does a person learn to see them? So the crucial insight here is that the technique goes against all our natural instincts. You're not supposed to focus harder. You're taught to relax your focus and see wider. The theory is that our peripheral vision is less filtered by the brain. It can detect movements and frequencies that our focused central vision is literally programmed to ignore. And this brings us to the method itself. It's called the soft gaze. The steps are pretty straightforward. First, you find a quiet spot, a room with low light, and you face a neutral wall. Then you soften your gaze, just relax your eye muscles, and let everything go a little bit out of focus. Third, you widen your view, trying to see the entire visual field all at once. Fourth, and this is the important part, You just acknowledge any movement you catch at the edges of your vision, but you don't snap your head to look at it. And finally, you just hold that relaxed state and allow your brain to stop filtering out whatever it is that it's detecting. Now, the sources claim this isn't something that takes a lifetime to achieve. They suggest that within just 1 week of practicing every day, you could start to perceive things. It might start with subtle flickers in your periphery. Then those become more consistent shapes, and that could lead to your first clear perception of a form or distortion.
And what might you see? Well, it's not described as some solid physical monster. It's supposed to be way more subtle. Things like distortions in the air, kind of like heat haze, or shadows that seem to have a three-dimensional quality to them. Dark, smoky shapes that move with what looks like a purpose. The key is that they're said to react when they realize they've been seen.
So if this technique actually works, what's the ultimate outcome? What really changes? That brings us to our final section, a world revealed. This entire system of hidden influence, of manipulation, it all hinges on one single thing: visibility. The simple act of perceiving them is claimed to be the one thing that they absolutely cannot withstand. And that poses a fascinating question, doesn't it? If an entity's power is based entirely on being unseen, what happens the moment it realizes its cover has been blown? This is the alleged payoff. The entire power dynamic inverts. When you can consciously see an influence, you can't be tricked into thinking it's just you. The claim is that conscious observation breaks the feedback loop they need to harvest emotion. The moment you recognize that influence as external, its power over you just dissolves. And so we end on this thought. Whether you see this as ancient wisdom, a psychological exercise, or just a fascinating piece of folklore, this teaching leaves us with a really provocative question. If you train your eyes to see beyond the filter, what, if anything, will you see looking back?